Anti-government protests in Chile spread across the entire country.
I think one of the messages
the World Health Organization urges countries to scale up their measures against COVID-19. And the Ethiopian military seizes a town near the capital of the Tigray region. Hello, welcome to teleSUR. I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is from the South. This Friday has been labeled a historic day in Chile, where protests against the Sebastián Piñera administration have spread across the entire country, and police continue to repress demonstrators in the capital, Santiago. Thousands of members of different social movements and trade unions in the regions of Antofagasta, Atacama, Coquimbo, Valparaíso, Maule, Biobío, Araucanía, and Magallanes have peacefully mobilized to demand the resignation of President Piñera. They also rejected the economic and social policies adopted by the Chilean government. Meanwhile, demonstrators continue to denounce the excessive use of force by the police and the use of toxic chemicals in water cannons used to disperse them. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro unveiled a monument that honors the centenary of the country's military aviation and the 28th anniversary of the military rebellion of November 27, 1992. The act was held in the northern state of Aragua, where participants honored the military history of the country and the events that marked the beginning of Venezuela's independence. The monument unveiled recognizes the participation of the Bolivarian military aviation in the defense of independence, sovereignty, and airspace.
Celebrating the 28th anniversary of the Great Bolivarian, Revolutionary, Anti-Imperialist Rebellion of November 27, 1992, the Great Anti-Oligarchy Rebellion, a rebellion of the people.
Rebelión de pueblo. Y nos ha tocado parir.
And we are struggling, but our message to the world is a single one. Our message to the North American empire is this. Here is the Venezuela of Bolívar. Venezuela is still standing, the Venezuela of dignity, the Venezuela of honor, the Venezuela of patriotism, and here no one surrenders.
President Maduro also highlighted the skills of the armed forces as well as the work to guarantee the defense of Venezuela's airspace.
La Fuerza Armada Nacional Bolivariana, yo como comandante en jefe.
The Bolivarian National Armed Forces and myself, as Commander-in-Chief, are proud to have a professional military aviation.
De gran avance educativo.
A great educational, academic, cultural, scientific, of great technical progress. Here are the minds. Here are the capabilities. Here is the knowledge. General-in-Chief Padrino, Admiral-in-Chief Ceballos, Major General Juliac, Major General Silva Ponte, Commander General, we are proud of this component.
Mayor General Juliac, Mayor General Silva Ponte, Comandante General, orgulloso de este componente.
A new investigation has found that major food brands are sourcing chicken from a company linked to deforestation in Brazil's Cerrado region. According to the investigation by Greenpeace through its journalism arm, said Tesco, Asda, Nando's, and McDonald's were found to be sourcing chicken produced by agribusiness giant Cargill and fed on Brazilian soybeans produced on land on the Cerrado savanna. This is one of the most threatened and overexploited regions in Brazil, home to the majority of the world's plants and animal species. The investigation found 800 square kilometers of deforestation on farms that supply Cargill and more than 12,000 recorded fires since 2015, a common way to clear land for agriculture. And Brazil has registered the highest number of COVID-19 infections since September 16th, and the number of deaths is also on the rise. In Sao Paulo, the largest city in the country, private hospitals have seen an increase in admissions for coronavirus patients in the last 2 weeks.
The government of Sao Paulo decreed a ban on new non-urgent surgeries of patients occupying COVID-19 beds. Hospitalizations in the city rose from 644 to 814 in 6 days. 44% of intensive care beds are filled now, and it was 32% a few days ago. Doctors warned that the clinic hospital is resuming surgeries that were held up at the beginning of the pandemic, so there are fewer beds available and it will be impossible to contain a new wave of COVID-19.
We had a very important drop in the number of cases 10 weeks ago. The numbers were coming down. But now we return to a critical situation, and in the case of the deaths, we have already the situation we had 5 weeks ago. But the deaths take longer to be reported. Therefore, this movement to extend care in the hospitals of Sao Paulo is not limited to the hospitals of the rich, private, but to the public hospitals already have well extended intensive care occupancy rates. The respiratory infection units of reference for COVID-19 have the lobbies full of people again. The hospitalizations increased again, and consequently we will have an impact on the death rates in the next weeks.
6 of the 7 municipalities in which the Brazilian Social Democracy Party will compete in the second round for the mayor's office are still in the green phase of quarantine. Advisors of Sao Paulo's governor called for physical distance measures against COVID-19, but the governor schedules the meeting for the day after the ballots take place.
The government of the state of Sao Paulo and the mayor's office fear they might lose the elections against a left-wing candidate. That's why they are reluctant to debate the measures or afraid they might be required to recognize the increase in contagion and admissions. Hence, they have a policy of hiding the increasing number of cases.
In a public letter, a group of doctors urged the middle and upper classes not to hold meetings, parties or gatherings. The tendency is to repeat the circuit of contagion from the upper classes to the workers who have less access to health services.
At first, the pandemic reached the country through the upper class, people who traveled to Europe, especially Italy, and ended up spreading it to the peripheral communities, affecting mainly those in poor areas, black people and those working in the irregular sector. Then, the distancing measures notably protected the richest, a protection bubble for the upper classes. As a result of the relaxation, these upper class people began to hold events, hang out in bars, parties and enclosed places, in complicity with the public authorities.
Brazil is experiencing a new cycle of COVID-19 infection that is not considered a new wave since the country has never perceived a reduction in infection cases, but rather a reduction in a level of contagion that is still considered quite high.
The Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, said that almost a year after she sounded the alarm that the CARICOM Development Fund was at risk, very little progress has been made. Mottley said the Development Fund needs a new financing model that should be focused on resilience and growth within the region. She also suggested that the time had come for a review of the Treaty of Chaguaramas, which established the Caribbean Community and Common Market, later known as CARICOM. She said this should be done to place greater emphasis on the renewable energy sector.
For us, as I said, it is fundamentally an issue of survival. And it has meant that we will have to discuss whether in truth and in fact we may need as a country to recognize that there is a cost to smallness and there is a cost to our wanting to survive, and that cost will be borne by us all by making the transition to renewable energy.
And fans continue to pay tribute to Diego Armando Maradona outside the Argentinos Juniors Stadium, which bears his name, as Argentines built improvised altars at several stadiums to honor the football legend who died on Wednesday.
Beyond the fact that the wake was held at Casa Rosada, I believe that he had been asked during his lifetime where he wanted to be held on the day of his death, he would have chosen Boca's pitch. I believe that he would have chosen that place because he is a popular idol throughout the world. We will see him at any football match, on any improvised pitch, in any 5 against 5. Wherever there is a ball rolling, there will be El Diego. There will be El Diego.
More stories coming up. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's continue with news. The World Health Organization has warned countries not to let their guard down despite the coronavirus spread slowing, and advised that authorities scale up the measures in case of any potential resurgence.
I think one of the messages we need to continue to say is, even as case numbers are coming down, all countries need to remain vigilant. You've heard us say this before, but we really need to emphasize this again. Do not let your guard down. It is good to see the measures taking effect and transmission going down, but it is not time to let up. It's time to even scale up. So in situations where you're bringing this under control, it is time to scale up your public health infrastructure still. Work on making sure that you have adequate workforce to do active case finding, to conduct those tests, to use those tests strategically, as you heard us say many times, and the Director General emphasize again today, to work to have your health systems be ready for any potential resurgence.
Scientists and public health experts with the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention will decide who will be the first to get a coronavirus vaccine once an emergency authorization is granted. The CDC's Advisory Committee for Immunization Practices has scheduled an emergency meeting to discuss COVID-19 vaccines for next week. Healthcare workers are expected to be in the first group, along with nursing home residents. Advisors will also discuss how to monitor their progress. Several vaccines, among them ones made by Pfizer and Moderna, have shown encouraging rates of effectiveness in clinical trials.
It's public health versus public health of the K through 12.
Ireland has lifted COVID-19 restrictions ahead of the holiday season. Under the new measures, all retail outlets, museums, galleries, and libraries will be allowed to reopen under social distancing measures starting December.
Are satisfied that this combination of new arrangements strikes a safe balance between maintaining the pressure on the disease and creating space for families, friends, and loved ones to be together this Christmas.
A Scottish university announced it will roll out mass COVID-19 testing for students before the end of the year holiday. The University of St. Andrews will roll out free tests for all students on Saturday. The tests are voluntary, but students have been advised to take them in order to avoid spreading the virus to their family or friends over the holidays. Students will be notified of the test results by email or text within 24 hours.
I am. I'm going to take a test before I go home, and then when I get home, I'll take a test, and then quarantine. When I come back here, I'll take a test, just because I want to make sure, it's free. I don't have to have symptoms to do it. I feel like it's the safest way to go about, traveling, going overseas. I think it's just the safest way to handle it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to take a test. I'm only down the road, but it's a huge peace of mind just to be able to go home and be with my family, knowing that everything's safe and everything's well, and we're lucky enough that we're able to be together in Christmas, and I don't want anything to compromise that, so I'm definitely going to be taking a test.
Okay, well, this is Scotland's first mass asymptomatic testing centre for students. It's part of a Scottish Government initiative to make sure that students can travel home for Christmas and keep their families and communities safe when they do so.
The Italian government will ease COVID-19 restrictions in 5 regions from Sunday, including the country's richest and most populous region, Lombardy. The Health Ministry announced that Lombardy, Piedmont and Calabria will be downgraded from red to orange zones, while Sicily and Liguria will drop from the orange to the yellow zone, which has least restrictions. Friday's decision follows a gradual decline in hospitalizations from coronavirus in much of Italy over the past week, with the number of new cases also retreating from highs seen earlier this month. Italy introduced a 3-tier zoning system 3 weeks ago, with curves depending on a variety of factors, including infection rates and hospital occupancy. Also in Italy, in the hills not far from Naples, the production of a new ultra-cooler capable of stocking vaccines at -80 degrees Celsius is about to begin. The Italian company Desmond, a subsidiary of U.S. multinational Middlebay, is testing the efficiency of this kind of freezer, which could transport up to 180,000 doses of the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine. We're taking one last break. Stay with us. Thank you for joining us again. In Somalia, a suicide attack near Mogadishu's airport left at least 7 people dead and 12 injured. According to official reports, the attack was targeted at a Somali intelligence officer. Local media reported that an employee of the Ethiopian embassy in Mogadishu is among the dead. The suicide attack near the capital's airport took place hours after a brief visit by the acting Secretary of Defense of the United States, Christopher Miller. This Friday, the United Nations Refugee Agency sent a shipment of 32 tons of humanitarian aid to Sudan to assist Ethiopian citizens who have fled the armed conflict in their home country. The agency reported that an additional 100 tons of humanitarian aid will arrive by air next Monday from Dubai as part of 4 airlifts that the agency has planned. According to a report by the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, since the beginning of the armed conflict in Ethiopia's Tigray region in early November, over 43,000 people have fled the country into Sudan in search of shelter and safety. In the midst of the situation, the High Commissioner has requested more resources and a substantial increase in international support for Sudan. Sudan is a country that, prior to the armed conflict in Ethiopia, was already home to nearly 1 million refugees, mainly from South Sudan. And a senior official said on Friday that the Ethiopian military has seized control of a town located 50 kilometers north of the capital of Tigray, a day after the government said it was beginning the final phase of its offensive in the northern region. Lieutenant General Hassan Ibrahim said in a statement that Ethiopian forces have captured the town of Wikro and will be in control of the Tigrayan capital Mekelle in a few days. He also claimed that government troops had taken control of several other towns. The Tigray People's Liberation Front has not yet confirmed the reports. On Sunday, the government gave the front until Wednesday to lay down arms or face an assault on Mekelle, a city of 500,000 people, raising fears of extensive civilian casualties. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed accuses Tigrayan leaders of starting the war by attacking federal troops at a base in Tigray on November 4th. But the Tigray People's Liberation Front said the attack was a preventive strike. One of Iran's most prominent nuclear scientists was assassinated on Friday in a drive-by attack while traveling near Absard, a small city just east of the capital, Tehran. Scientist Mohsen Fakhrizadeh was mortally wounded in a targeted attack that saw gunmen use explosives and machine gun fire. He headed the Defense Ministry's Research and Innovation Organization. Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif has condemned the killing as an act of state terror, saying on Twitter that there were serious indications of an Israeli role in their assassination. Zarif also called on the international community to end its shameful double standards and condemn the terrorist attack. In Iraq, clashes between anti-government protesters and followers of a firebrand cleric have resulted in the deaths of 4 people, while dozens were injured. According to statements by the leader of the anti-government mobilizations, Mohammed al-Kayet, the confrontations took place after criminal gangs allegedly linked to cleric Muqtada al-Sadr burst into the campaign tents of anti-government protesters in Habobi Square, in the southern city of Nasiri Yahi. Earlier, al-Sadr's followers gathered in the city of Baghdad and other southern provinces to protest institutional corruption and hold prayers in Tahrir Square. The mobilizations and clashes come in the context of the legislative elections scheduled for June next year. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko announced he had proof of Poland's interference in his country's internal affairs to support opposition groups. Lukashenko said that the Belarusian security service had provided him with reports, noting that Warsaw carefully monitored the events in Belarus, aiming to create an artificial crisis. He quoted several Polish statesmen, namely the Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki, who allegedly said that the future of Belarus was of great importance for Poland, recognizing that Warsaw had taken many concrete steps to help what he called the Belarusian Revolution by providing financial support through Polish and Polish-US programs of solidarity with supposed victims of the Lukashenko regime and independent media, as well as NGOs. Indian farmers continued to protest after clashes with the police on Friday as they attempted to march on New Delhi. They're protesting agricultural reforms that they fear will leave them at the mercy of big corporations.
Each of our tractors is loaded with rations up to 4 months. The wheat has been sowed, and the farmers of Punjab and Haryana are all free now. Until the time the government revises these new laws, none of us will go back.
We are farmers, like most people in Punjab. We feel that it would affect the government agriculture markets, and we would have to go to private agriculture markets who would pay us low rates for our produce. The minimum price guaranteed by the government, what we are getting for our farm produce, it will stop.
Authorities of the Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region of China announced that mass screening for COVID-19 will take place for the second time in 5 days. The testing day will be carried out after simultaneous clusters of infections were discovered in different groups of people. Since November 21st, the region has reported another 11 patients affected by the disease, while over 600 of their close contacts remain under medical observation. The regions of Tianjin, Shanghai, and Hong Kong are also fighting the resurgence of domestic cases of COVID-19. China has registered over 4,700 deaths from COVID-19 and over 93,000 confirmed cases. And with that, we end this news brief. But remember, you can find all of our stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. And be sure to find us also on social media. Until next time.